Throughout 2025, my overarching spending theme was to buy less and buy better. And I actually made a video about this at the beginning of the year. So today we are going to go over my 2025 consumption rules and spending goals and reflect on whether I was successful or not. There's a lot of personal finance jargon on the internet, but here at Break Your Budget, we cut through the crap and focus on getting the basics right. At the end of 2024, when I moved out of my apartment in LA, I was absolutely shocked at how much stuff I had. I remember distinctly when I was talking to my movers and we were working on a quote, I told them that I had maybe 10 boxes worth of things. And when they actually came and moved me out, I had 36 boxes, which they actually told me relative to other people was on the low end. But to me, it just felt like so much stuff and way more stuff than I want to be responsible for. And mind you, that was after I purged as I was packing things up. This really was the true beginning of my buy less and buy better journey, because even though earlier in the year I had started to really focus on buying higher quality items, I still felt like I had so much stuff hiding in my closet, in drawers, in cabinets all throughout my apartment that I wasn't using. So when I moved into this apartment here in Chicago, not only did I go through a full purge when I was first packing up my apartment in LA, but also when I was unpacking my apartment here, I vowed that I would not leave this apartment with more than what I came here with. What that did was it spurred me to create my consumption rules for 2025. And today I'm going to break down what those rules were and if I was able to successfully follow them and why or why not. I think it's super important at the end of every year to reflect on the goals that you set early on. And for me, this year really has been all about making smarter, more informed spending decisions. So if you set consumption rules in 2025, I would encourage you to take some time to reflect on them and also let me know in the comments what they were. But if you are someone who maybe didn't set consumption rules, or this is the first time you're even hearing about what consumption rules are, I invite you to join me in 2026 and set some consumption rules and have fun with me on this journey of buying less and buying better. For reference, I broke my consumption rules up into 3 key categories: wardrobe and clothes, beauty, and then home decor. I will say the majority of my spending this year has been on wardrobe and clothes, so we'll be talking about that for the longest. And with that, let's just get right into it. So, my first wardrobe and clothing consumption rule was to really focus on material composition. The specific rule was that material composition reigns supreme, and I didn't want to purchase anything that was more than 20% non natural material. So, my threshold was 80% natural materials. So, when I say natural materials, I'm thinking like cotton, wool, cashmere, silk, things like that. Linen is another one. This one, I do feel like overarchingly I nailed, specifically when it comes to the everyday basics and everyday clothes that I'm wearing. When I think about a lot of the additions that I made to my closet this year, they were mostly focused on the everyday staples that I was just aiming to elevate. So t-shirts and long sleeves, I got a few new pairs of jeans, I got some linen, I got some new sweaters. And I would say of these everyday things, pretty much 100% of them were 100% natural material. So like all my long sleeves and all my layering t-shirts are 100% cotton. All of my sweaters are either 100% cotton, 100% wool, 100% cashmere, or some blend of those. And then for jeans, I don't buy jeans that aren't 100% cotton denim. A few of my favorite brands for jeans are a Goldie, and I also really like Levi's. I did do a whole episode on my podcast though recently all about like elevating your wardrobe and wardrobe lessons. So I will link to that if you are interested in watching it. What I will say though is where I wasn't successful with this particular goal around material composition is with workout gear and outerwear. And I think it's because it's really challenging to find both workout gear and outerwear that's made of 100% natural materials. I actually don't really think it exists. If you know though, please let me know in the comments. A lot of these items do have polyester in them. And if you go back and listen to my video at the beginning of this year, I vowed to never buy polyester again, which I was not successful in doing. I'm sitting here in a polyester vest, but they don't make vests like this that aren't made of polyester. The thing about polyester is that it traps heat. So for outerwear specifically, I'm actually okay with that because I want my outerwear to be warm. The other thing about polyester is that it does add durability. So for outerwear specifically, like jackets and vests and fleeces, I have a lot of these Polar Tech vests and fleeces from Aritzia. it does help them stay more durable and also keep you warm. So in that case, I'm totally fine with it. The biggest struggle area though that I found was workout clothes, because it is very difficult to find workout clothes that aren't made of polyester or acrylic. And to be completely frank, the ones that I like are made of polyester. I like the Beyond Yoga workout sets. I find that they are durable, they fit me nicely, they don't trap too much heat, but they are made of polyester. And so I've decided that going forward, unless I can find a comparable brand that makes sets that I also like the fit of and the style of and the color of and whatever, I'm okay for this portion of my wardrobe to not be 100% natural materials. The unfortunate reality is that we don't live in a world where our options are 100% natural. And so you just have to decide what is and isn't important to you. And in this case, like for workout stuff, I'm willing to make that compromise. I think the biggest lesson I've learned from really focusing on material composition is that I want the majority of my closet, specifically like my day wear, not my workout wear, to be natural materials. I want them to be elevated basics and classic styles that I can wear for a long period of time. And I will say from that lens this year, I was very successful. If you're interested in like some of my favorite clothing brands and things that I purchased, I do always have everything linked on my Shop My. I'm only going to say that once in this video because I know it can be kind of annoying. My Shop My is always linked in the description, so you can go on there and browse and see what I have. Moving on, my second clothing and wardrobe consumption rule this year was one in, one out, meaning that if I purchased something, I had to also remove something from my closet. And I will say overarchingly, I did accomplish this, but I did it in a more of a roundabout way. And what I mean by that is that when I did buy something, it wasn't like I hung it up in my closet and immediately took something else out of my closet. What I did this year was I ended up actually doing seasonal purges. I would say like every other month or every 2 months or so as the season started to change. I really rotated things out of my closet and donated and discarded and brought things home to my parents' house and gave things away that I wasn't wearing or that were out of style, or maybe they were worn down and I couldn't get any more use out of. And as I did that, I was able to then identify wardrobe gaps and make replacements or elevate certain things that were necessary. So it wasn't as methodical as one in, one out, but I will say when I moved into this apartment, I didn't have any empty hangers. And now at the end of the year, I have about 30 empty hangers. So I definitely have less clothes, which is the goal. Like I want to have less stuff, but have the stuff that I do own be things that I'm wearing all the time. What I have learned through this wardrobe upgrade process, though, is that it does take a lot of time. And if you are trying to be really intentional about elevating your wardrobe and actually investing in nice pieces, it's not something that you can do in a year. I definitely made some big changes to my wardrobe this year, and I don't anticipate having to make as many changes next year, but I do know going into 2026 that like I will be adding some different things to my wardrobe. And so the way that I'm approaching it is I'm just trying to have a lot of discernment with what I'm keeping. And if I find that there are things that I'm not wearing or I'm not reaching for, or when I put them on, I don't love them, I'm making a much more intentional effort to slowly discard those. My last wardrobe consumption rule was to only make one purchase per month. And I'm going to be completely honest, this one was an epic failure. I did not do this. And I think that this was a failure, not because it's not possible for me, but because it wasn't aligned with the goals that I set for my wardrobe this year. And I think I just ultimately didn't set myself up for success by implementing this rule. I went into this year having moved to an entirely new city with an entirely new climate. Like when I lived in LA, I did not need to have a winter wardrobe. I had one wardrobe that I could wear all year long. And here we have 4 distinct seasons. And for each season, I do need to have different pieces, many of which I did not have when I moved here. So to think that I would elevate my wardrobe and also only buy one new item per month this year, I just think wasn't really realistic, and it didn't happen. I would say on average, I bought probably 2 to 3 items a month, all of which I did so with discernment, right? Like I'm trying to fill wardrobe gaps. I'm trying to be intentional about the things that I own and the things that I wear, but it definitely was more than one item per month. And I still feel like I have a little bit of a ways to go. I don't think this is a rule that I'll carry with me into 2026, but it is a rule that I hope to get to when I feel like my wardrobe is more well-rounded, which I think I need probably another year to get there. Moving on to my beauty consumption rule. My biggest rule this year was to use up the products that I already had and really do a project pan. Project pan means that you are using up your items to completion before you go out and buy or open something new. Really, I don't think we should be giving that a name. I think that's just normal consumption. But in the era that we live in, it's not something that we're all doing. And it's definitely not something that I was doing prior to this year. So I will say, point blank, I did not do this. Like, I definitely bought new skincare this year when I didn't necessarily need to. But given the context of the situations I was in, I still feel like I was pretty successful with this. I have a long ways to go in 2026, but let me explain. The first thing, though, that I want to highlight is when I think about beauty, I'm largely thinking about skincare. I really don't spend a lot of money on makeup. I actually somehow, some way have ended up on the Bare Minerals PR list. So they do send me some makeup, I would say every couple of months, and that ends up being enough to replace most of what I have. So in general, I would say this year, I probably only spent like $100 on makeup in total. It's just not something I'm buying, and it's not something that I wear too much of. So I'm not going through it really quickly. But skincare, I use and I love, and I actually have no issue spending money on skincare because I do think that your skin is really important, and having products that work for your skin is also really important, especially from a confidence standpoint. But again, back to this whole story of moving last year, I found when I was packing up my apartment and packing up my cosmetics bag and stuff, I had a lot of half used, half opened skincare products. And I also had a lot of products that were expired that I never even really got to. So my goal this year was to start using up all my products before I buy anything new. And I actually was pretty successful with this, with the exception of two specific instances. The first specific instance was I went to Japan and Korea, and that is the skincare capital of the globe. So obviously, I bought some stuff. I wanted to try all of the new innovative Korean skincare stuff. I bought probably $1,000 worth of skincare while I was there. And I have absolutely no regrets. I have been plowing through those products ever since I got home back in June. And I've actually used up a lot of them. I did buy a lot of products, so I still have some that I haven't gotten to yet. But overall, like, I think it's totally fine given that circumstance that I didn't stick to this goal, because when I'm in Korea, like, obviously I'm going to get some skincare. The second instance was more recently, and it was during the Sephora sale. I restocked on a bunch of products that I already know that I really loved and that I would have repurchased anyways. So I will make exceptions to this rule if products that I know I'm going to use up do go on sale. What I don't do is buy a ton of them. Like, I'll buy one, maybe two, depending on the item. But if they are on sale, like, I'm going to take advantage of that sale so that I can save money in the long term. And I only really do that on products that I've already like tried and true and tested that I would be repurchasing anyways. So if we're looking at this rule objectively, like, obviously I was unsuccessful, but if we're looking at the rule in the context of eliminating those two specific exceptions, outside of that, I actually did a pretty good job of using up products to completion and like not opening new things until I really needed to. This is a rule that I am going to be carrying with me into next year. I don't have any plans to go to Japan or Korea in 2026, so I don't anticipate having the same problem. But I do have a pretty big backlog of skincare that I'm actually quite excited to continue working through. My second beauty rule was to not open anything new until I've finished a like or similar product. And I will say this specific rule I did really well with. This is a big one for me because I have a tendency to open a new product as soon as I get it. And then I end up having a bunch of half used or half opened products and I don't finish them. And I just wanted to stop doing that. Also, like, I don't want my medicine cabinet to be full of products that I'm not using all the time. My goal is to have like my current skincare regimen be the only products that are open. And when I finish something, I'll either replace it with something that I already have, or if I don't already have it, I will go out and repurchase. So really what this rule is that I won't open up any new or similar products until I've completely finished the products that I already have open. So like, I only have one moisturizer open at a time or one retinol open at a time. And this honestly has been very, very helpful for me in actually using products up. If I do have a product that I don't like, I won't force myself to finish it. But generally speaking, I'm not opening multiples of the same thing. My last beauty consumption rule was to stop hoarding products. This is an issue for me because as a self-proclaimed budget queen, if I do have backup products, I have a tendency to like hoard them. This is specifically a problem when I get sent skincare PR. I do get occasionally some free skincare. It's not something I get all the time, but when I get it, I have this like urge to hang on to it and use it as backup so that I don't have to go buy more. The issue with this is that a lot of the skincare PR that gets sent to me, I like kind of don't want. I've found the products that work for me, and those are really the only products that I want to be keeping in my rotation. I would say there's a few exceptions to this, like if there's a new brand or a new product of a brand I already love, like Polish Choice. If they send me products, I'm going to use them because I already know that I love Polish Choice as a brand in general. But ultimately, because I do get sent some of this PR, I found that it got to a point where I was holding on to tons of products under this guise that like I would go into that bin and use them. And I found I just wasn't doing that. So this year, rather than hanging on to those products in the hope that I might use them one day, I decided that every couple of months, I'm going to be going through them and giving them away to people in my life or donating them where I can. Anytime that I have a friend over, I always let them go through my skincare bucket or my makeup bucket and they can choose whatever they want. I find that this is really rewarding because usually people are really excited to have some free products or to try something new, but it also gets rid of stuff that's just taking up space in my closet. What I've learned through this whole process is that I used to think I would eventually use these products, and what I found was I never actually did. So it feels a lot better to give those products a new home to somebody who will actually use them rather than hoarding them in my space and having them just go to waste. The last section here of my consumption rules is related to home decor and like home stuff. And to be completely transparent, this isn't really an area I struggle with too much for a few reasons. One being I live in a small space alone, and two, I like to have a clean, minimal space. I don't like to have a lot of clutter. I don't like to have a lot of knickknacks. So I find that it's not something I really struggle with buying a lot of. That being said, I do like to have nice things and I want my space to feel homey. So when I moved into this apartment originally, the first consumption rule that I set was to live in this space for a full month before I bought anything new. And the reason I set this rule is because when I moved into my apartment in LA, that was the first time I lived in an apartment alone. And I feel like I was just so excited to fill it up that I went out and I bought a bunch of stuff really quickly that ultimately had no cohesive theme. It wasn't really aligned with my personal style. And it ended up just becoming really cluttered. And a lot of the stuff that I did get wasn't high quality. And I ended up donating it or selling it when I moved, anyways. And because moving tends to be really expensive, I set a rule for myself that I needed to live in this space for a full month before I bought anything new. The only exception to this was I did need to buy a new couch because when my stuff arrived, my couch didn't fit in this space, which that was annoying, but it's totally fine. It worked out. And what I learned pretty quickly is that I really didn't need anything. Like I had everything that I would need for this space. And by cutting myself off, I was able to make do and realize on my own accord that I didn't need to buy anything else for this apartment. And I will say, like, I feel like my apartment is still pretty cozy and pretty cute given what I have and the size of it. I am planning to live in this space for another year, so I may enhance it a little bit, but I try to do so with discernment because whenever I move into another space, whether the space I move into after this is more permanent or not, I want to make sure that I'm not accumulating things that I then need to get rid of. Which segues into my second consumption rule related to home decor, which was to stop buying any unnecessary decor in general. This was a big one for me because, as I mentioned, in my apartment in LA, I felt like I had a lot of clutter with no sense of cohesive style. And the issue with decor, especially in apartments, is that every apartment is so different. So like what works in one space may not translate into a different space. And until I'm in a more permanent space, I really don't want to be spending a lot of money on decor that might not even work in the next apartment that I live in. I will say in this apartment specifically, because it is very small, I don't really have a lot of space to like put anything. So that just makes it naturally easier to not buy a lot of decor because if I want to keep my space clean and minimal, if I buy anything else, it will start to become very cluttered in here. The one home decor thing that I did buy new this year was this beautiful photo for my living room. I feel like it really tied the space together. I don't have a lot of art on my wall, so this really did make a difference. This is actually a photo that my mom took. I will link her website in the description. She's a very talented photographer and she takes all sorts of like landscapes and seascapes on Cape Cod specifically, but also all around New England. I am planning to purchase another one of her photos to hang over my bed. So I'll let you know when I do that. My last home decor consumption rule was to aim to donate one item per month or at least 12 items in total. And I definitely did this. I would say the majority of the donations I made this year were books because when I moved into this space, I had 2 full boxes of books and nowhere to put them. So I donated, I would say, probably 50 books to the library just because I didn't want to hang on to them. They're very bulky and I probably wasn't going to read them anyways. I prefer reading on my Kindle. The other things that I donated this year, I donated a lot of kitchen stuff and I also donated a lot of like blankets and baskets for my living room. It's a prime example of buying things to fill up my old space that I didn't really have a home in this apartment. And it felt good to reduce the amount of items that I had in like my home and living room. 'Cause I feel like when we think about discarding, we're only thinking about discarding things in our closet and we forget that there's all of these other spaces in our home. Anyways, those were my consumption rules for 2025. I feel like in general, this was an overarchingly successful spending year. I definitely looking back probably spent a little bit more money than I had intended to. And I will say that's largely related to my wardrobe. But when I think about it, there really isn't anything I bought this year that I don't love, that I don't use all the time. And that is the goal. If you have a consumption rule for 2026, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or you learned something, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and you subscribe to my channel. And I will catch you in the next one.